Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening: the Sensex and the Nifty fall for the third straight week. Financials and defense stocks lead the decline. Mid-cap index bucks the trend, gaining 1%. A leadership churn at Axis Bank. Senior executive Arjun Chowdhry resigns, marking the sixth top-level exit in the last 2 years. Neeraj Gambhir appointed whole-time director to replace Rajiv Anand, who retires in August. All of this comes as concerns mount over rising bad loans and slowing loan growth. Reliance Industries Q1 earnings today. The company is likely to report a 16% increase in the first quarter profits. Oils to chemical, digital and retail segments expected to see strong growth. Jio expected to see a 1% rise in the average revenue per user. The shortage of rare earth magnets draws the attention of the Prime Minister's office. Sources say the PMO is likely to hold a meeting with top officials from Commerce, Heavy Industries and Mines Ministries. India Inc. has been raising the alarm since China restricted the export of rare earths around 3 months ago. The much-awaited GST rate-rationalisation exercise is likely imminent, from cement to insurance, premium to telecom, two-wheelers and tractors. Brokerages are optimistic about significant changes in the tax rates when the council meets next time. Prime Minister Modi is likely to visit the United Kingdom next week to sign the free trade agreement. Government sources say Indian and British officials are completing the legal modalities of the deal, which needs to be ratified by the Union Cabinet, India and the British Parliament. The EU targets Russia's oil income in a fresh round of sanctions, imposes restrictions on Rosneft's refinery in India, also lowers the price limit on Russian crude oil. Facing a fierce backlash from his own supporters, President Trump orders the release of pertinent documents from the grand jury testimony related to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case. The decision follows a Wall Street Journal report which claims Trump gifted a letter featuring a drawing of a naked woman's silhouette and a personal note to Epstein on his 50th birthday. Well, straight to the day's market action. They continue to remain weak as quarterly results flowed in. Sensex falling over 500 points. The Nifty closing below the 25,000 mark, so down by about 0.5%. The Nifty Bank, by the way, lost about 1% this afternoon. Now, the markets have fallen for the third straight week, and financial stocks have dragged the markets lower. The Sensex, the Nifty Bank fell 1%. Mid-caps are closing in positive territory today, closing by about 462 points higher. Let's go across to Mangalam now. He joins us to wrap up the week that was and the week ahead. Mangalam.
But it was a down day this time. In fact, the Nifty closed below the 25,000 mark in the third week in a row where the Nifty ended lower. And today's weakness, this week's weakness, could be attributed to the weakness that we've seen in results so far. A large part of the weakness was led by the IT stocks, and finally we had the financials also lose. For instance, the top loser on the Nifty today was Axis Bank, down 5% after a weak asset quality that the company reported. And all eyes will now be on some of the heavyweight banks like ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank that report their numbers fairly shortly as well. Importantly, the IT stocks. Now, despite the weakness that we've seen through the course of the week, Vipro's results were fairly well received by the street. The stock was higher by 2% on an inline set of numbers, notwithstanding the weakness in other IT stocks. So the question now is a large part of the weakness in IT in the price or not? That's something we'll watch out for as the second rung of these companies report their numbers. The mid-caps, there also, the moves were a lot more result-oriented. We had stocks like Indian Hotels, HDFC AMC, Tata Com, even Nuvoco Vistas do well on the back of good performance, but by and large, there were two stocks that declined for every stock that was higher in today's trading session. We had some of the metals names which were outperforming in an otherwise bleak market. The defense stocks, they continued to see weakness. In fact, among the biggest losers this week, we had the likes of Bharat Dynamics and the others. We did see some weakness in a couple of these insurance names as well. The stock reactions versus the results have been in opposite directions. ICICI Lombard, the top loser this week.
Mangalam, many thanks. Now, Axis Bank faces top-level churn. Neeraj Gambhir has been appointed as the new whole-time director. He replaces Rajiv Anand, who's set to retire in August. Senior executive Arjun Chowdhry has resigned as well, marking the sixth senior-level exit from the bank in under 2 years. The bank's concerns have also mounted over management exits amidst bad loans and loan growth slowing. The bank's stock was down over 5% in trade today. This after it reported a disappointing set of Q1 numbers. Ritu's here with us. Ritu, Axis Bank's concerns escalating.
Escalating they are, Shireen, and it's not being helped by the top-level churn that is underway at Axis Bank. First, of course, Neeraj Gambhir, who is the group head of Treasury Markets and Wholesale Banking, he has been elevated to a whole-time director role, designated an ED for a 3-year term, and that's because Rajiv Anand, who's been the long-serving DMD and whole-time director, is stepping down. But, this is not an isolated shift at all. In fact, in the past 2 years, or less than 2 years, 6 top executives have exited or are on their way out of the bank. The latest, like you said, Arjun Chowdhry, the group executive for cards, payments and retail lending, he has put in his papers. Rajiv Anand, we know, is already going to retire in August. And even before them, your key leaders heading retail banking, liabilities, audit, wholesale banking have all resigned from their positions. And these changes are really coming at a time when Axis is facing a lot of operational headwinds, particularly when it comes to asset quality. In the numbers that the bank has just reported, that slippage shock of 8,200 crores of bad loans, even if you set aside the technical impact, is quite high, nearly double the 2-year average. Gross NPA is the highest in 6 quarters. Credit costs have remained higher than peers. In fact, more than twice of HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank, despite having a comparable sort of loan mix. Now, this is triggering some concerns on the street. You have analysts like Suresh Ganpati of Macquarie pointedly asking questions about, these technical credit costs and adjustments have been done in the past. And if what the bank is doing now is truly a technical adjustment, where are the recoveries? Why now? Why not earlier? Could there be an underwriting issue in the retail book and so on? Now, even beyond asset quality, growth metrics have weakened. The loan and deposit growth have lagged the system average for many quarters now. In the first quarter, credit growth at just 8%, deposit at just over 9%, again underperforming the industry average. But perhaps the most dramatic reversal has been in retail lending, which has been the bank's key growth engine, from 27% in the third quarter of FY24 kind of peaks to just 6% in the first quarter now. But to be clear, there are industry-wide issues on credit and deposit growth slowdown. So this is not just an Axis Bank issue, but what's making it worse is this getting mixed in with senior management exits as well. And that certainly puts the bank in an uncomfortable spot. So there are bound to be questions on what comes next.
All right, Ritu, appreciate you joining us. Axis Bank CEO, while responding to Ritu's questions at the management conference call, said that about 25% of slippages are from the agri portfolio. Here's that conversation. Listen in.
So roughly, if you look at what we do is quarter 1 and quarter 3 are cyclical. And the way I would request you to think about it is, in quarter 1 and quarter 3, about 25% or thereabouts of slippages are from the agri portfolio. So you could apply the maths to 5,400 crores, and roughly about 25% or thereabouts would be agri. The percentage would be broadly similar for last year's rupee crore number. The rest of the 75% is coming entirely from the unsecured business. We are very clear in making a call out saying we do not see stress in the secured part of our retail book as on date.
While Axis Bank was a stock under pressure, shares of Vipro surged in trade in response to the company's earnings. While the company met estimates in the first quarter, revenue contracted 2% on a constant currency basis. Margins also contracted sequentially, but all of this largely in line with estimates. In fact, speaking to CNBC-TV18, Vipro CEO Srini Pallia said there is a strong deal momentum and he expects FY26 to be better than FY25. Take a look.
So there is this very strong deal momentum that we have had in quarter 1, which we trying to carry to quarter 2. Of course, some of these deals will take its own time before we start ramping up. Second half for us will definitely be better than the first half, especially because of the large deal bookings and the pipeline that we have at this point in time. What is very important for us to execute these large deals. And also the pipeline continues to stay strong for us. So that gives us the confidence that H2 will be better than H1.
Metal giant JSW Steel reporting a strong set of earnings. Operating numbers fared better than estimates. EBITDA up 38%. Margins saw an expansion of 480 basis points. Moving on to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive, China's curbs on rare earth magnets continue and there's been no breakthrough yet. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the Prime Minister's office is holding a meeting today with top officials from Commerce, Heavy Industries and the Mines Ministries. The electronics industry separately has also been raising the alarm since China restricted the export of rare earths around 3 months ago. Ashmit is standing by now to take us through what industry's key concerns are and whether there is any breakthrough in sight. Ashmit, to be clear, there is nothing official about China's restrictions. What are you picking up from sources in terms of the impact on the electronic industry? Because the auto sector has already raised its concerns, saying that production has been impacted. What's the electronics industry's view and how worried are they today?
Well, that's in fact one of the aspects that have been flagged by the industry, that as far as these restrictions are concerned, including on rare earth, it is not unique to the auto industry. There are magnets, critical minerals also used by the electronics industry. It's impacting them as well. They're feeling the pain, and so much so that they're going on to say that there is a serious risk of losing out on the smartphone manufacturing momentum that we've seen in the country. In fact, the figures, the exports from smartphones in India for FY26 pegged at $32 billion. That's being put to risk. That's the assessment that the electronics industry has given to the government, saying that there are no formal restrictions, there are no notifications, directives to Chinese government officials, but there are oral directions, oral directives coming in from Beijing to Chinese companies, to Chinese officials on 3 critical choke points. The industry has identified 3 choke points, one of them being rare earth, critical minerals. Here again, the industry is saying it's not unique to the auto industry. We're experiencing pain as well. The other is recall of Chinese workers. This, the industry says, will directly impact transfer of technology. And number 3, capital equipment being imported from China, restrictions there as well. That, the industry says, is likely to impact production going forward. So on all of these aspects, the industry is saying these are carefully calibrated, sequential measures being taken by the Chinese administration, and thereby calling on the Indian government to respond, asking the Indian government for help in terms of resolving these issues, giving in a word of caution as well that if left unchecked, such measures, if left unaddressed, such measures by the Chinese government could have far-reaching consequences for electronic smartphone manufacturing in the country. What has been the response of the government? Well, the government is quite clear. It has seized off these issues. These issues are not new. The government is aware of them, but so far there has been no state-led approach in terms of resolving any one of these 3 issues. In fact, specifically speaking on the subject of recall of workers themselves, the unofficial view coming in from the government is that this is an issue affecting a private company, and it is for the management and shareholders of that private company to go about resolving this issue.
All right, Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. Now, the much-awaited GST rate rationalisation exercise is likely imminent. Sources tell us that the GST Council will deliberate on moving to a 3-rate structure at its next meeting. Meanwhile, brokerages are optimistic about significant changes in the tax rates. Timsy standing by. Timsy, tell us more about what could be on the agenda in the next GST meeting and the expectations that the market is building in. What are brokerages saying?
Well, as hopes of GST rate rejig pick up pace, and sources indicate that deliberations have started on shifting items to new rates, also moving to a possible 3-slab structure by doing away with 12% rate under the GST regime. It is anticipated that the upcoming GST Council meeting may take up these proposals for consideration. Meanwhile, brokerages and experts are penciling in an opportunity for significant changes to not only the rates but also the GST structure itself. Brokerage firm Jefferies believes items such as cement can be brought down from current 28% to 18%. Similarly, two-wheelers less than 350cc is also at 28% and could be brought down to 18%. On health insurance premia too, the agency says that it can be brought down from 18% to 5%. For telecom services, Jefferies proposes a rate cut from current 18%, and on hybrid passenger vehicles too, they propose a rate cut from current 28% plus cess, and on processed foods, footwear and apparel, rates could change from current 12% to 5% or 18%, depending upon subcategories. Rating agency Nomura too proposes that term life insurance can be brought down from current 18% to 5%. Tractors can be brought down from 12% to 5%, and air conditioners too can be reduced from 28%. Expectations by Morgan Stanley is to include natural gas under the GST ambit to reduce a lot of costs for the industry and consumers. Brokerages have listed reasons and potential revenue impact on these proposals. To be seen now is whether any of these proposals can actually make it to the council, and yes, whether council will be able to take a decision or not, something that we'll have to wait and watch for.
Well, that certainly is the big question. All eyes on the GST Council meeting. Timsy, many thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Modi may go to the UK next week to ink the India-UK free trade agreement. That's been in the works for quite some time, and it has officially been announced. This will be the formalisation. Government sources tell CNBC-TV18 that officials of both nations are currently sealing the legal modalities of the deal. Abhimanyu here with the details. Abhimanyu, so the Prime Minister likely to head to the UK?
Government sources have indicated that the India-UK free trade agreement is likely to be signed next week. Currently, legal scrubbing is underway for the FTA, and post-signing, the FTA will require approval from India's Union Cabinet and from the British Parliament to come into effect. Earlier, government sources had indicated that the FTA will eventually lead to an overall increase in exports from India, as well as double the volume of bilateral trade to $120 billion by 2030. Now, highlighting duty-free access to 99% of tariff lines for almost 100% of trade value in exports of IC engine vehicles. Sources had also added that the UK will levy zero duty on export of Indian goods on 95% tariff lines in agriculture, fruits, vegetables, processed foods and cereals. In reciprocation, India is likely to cut tariffs on 90% of imports from the UK. A bilateral investment treaty is also being negotiated separately by India's Department of Economic Affairs. Sources had earlier pointed out that a lot of work has already taken place on the bilateral investment treaty. It remains to be seen how early this FTA is going to be signed and what kind of bearing it's possibly going to have on overall trade between India and the UK, and subsequently on future FTAs being negotiated by India.
Abhimanyu, many thanks. The National Company Law Appellate Tribunal has granted a stay on the NCLT order that directed insolvency proceedings against Reliance Infrastructure. The case was initiated after IDBI trusteeship filed a plea and alleged default of around 90 crore rupees by the company. However, the company informed the court that all outstanding dues, including interest, has now been fully paid. We'll head into a break, but up next, President Trump orders the release of the pertinent documents from the grand jury testimony related to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case, facing a fierce backlash from its own supporters. That and more when we return. You're with Business 360. The big global headlines that we're tracking this hour. Israeli forces continue to bombard Gaza. At least 10 Palestinians have been killed in the last 24 hours. These include 5 people who were killed after Israeli forces attacked tents that were sheltering displaced Palestinians. Syrian forces have resumed fighting with Druze fighters and Bedouin tribes in the southern region of the country. This comes a day after Syrian troops pulled out of the area. A Syrian government spokesperson denied reports that government forces are being redeployed to the same region to stop the renewed tensions. Russian troops have claimed to have captured 3 villages in Ukraine. As fighting intensifies, Ukraine has disputed parts of the Russian account, particularly those concerning a key southeastern village. Russia said its air defenses destroyed 73 Ukrainian drones overnight, including several near Moscow. However, no casualties were reported. The European Union has targeted Russia's oil income in a fresh round of sanctions. The measures impose restrictions on Rosneft's refinery here in India. Now, the new measures also lower the price cap for buying Russian crude oil to $50 per barrel. Sonal is here to explain what this latest set of sanctions mean. Sonal.
Well, fresh sanctions coming in from the European Union. In a communique, they have spoken about how there are more sanctions coming in on Russia. The first one being fresh restrictions on companies which are linked to the Nord Stream gas pipeline, which is a very important pipeline for gas transportation. The second one is a lower cap on Russian crude sales, which has been reduced to $50 per barrel versus $60 per barrel earlier. The third one is they have cut off additional 22 Russian banking institutions from the SWIFT global payments. The fourth one is they've added 105 more vessels to the blacklist, in addition to 342 which were subject to sanctions, which were used for transporting Russian oil to different parts of the world. And the fifth one, restrictions on the export of equipment and materials that could be used in Russian defense industry. Now, just taking the crude oil point further, because it is very important for India, and what could the impact be of such sanctions on India? Now, this will also include restrictions on operations of Rosneft's 20 million tons per annum refinery in India, and it will impact both crude sourcing and refining in the country itself. Analysts are suggesting that there will be renewed hassles to secure vessels and insurance as well on crude which is imported from Russia right now. Remember, this particular sourcing has been continuously increasing. Right now, we source around 25% of our total crude from Russia. This would mean if there are sanctions, travel costs would increase, insurance costs would increase, and that will mean that the cost overall for all marketing companies would increase when it comes to sourcing crude from Russia. So it is a negative which has come back.
Sonal, many thanks. President Trump has directed U.S. Attorney General to seek the court's approval to release grand jury records related to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case. President Trump claimed that he took the decision because of the ridiculous amount of publicity around the case. This comes after a Wall Street Journal report claimed that the president gifted a letter featuring a drawing of a naked woman's silhouette and a personal note to Epstein on his 50th birthday. Trump has threatened to sue the Wall Street Journal for the report, calling it fake and defamatory. Here's a report.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to release grand jury testimony related to Jeffrey Epstein, the now deceased financier and sex offender, subject to court approval. Some of Trump's political base who were expecting lurid details about Epstein reacted in fury earlier this month after the Trump administration reversed a pledge to release documents it once suggested would offer major revelations about Epstein and his alleged clientele. A Justice Department report this month also concluded that there was no evidence to support a number of long-held conspiracy theories about his clients and 2019 death in prison. It's caused a rare fracture of support for Trump, who has called the matter a hoax. On Thursday, he wrote on his Truth Social platform that, quote, "Based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony," before going on to blame Democrats for what he called a scam. Shortly after Trump's post, Bondi said on X that the Justice Department was ready to ask the court on Friday to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Allegations that Epstein had been sexually abusing girls became public in 2006, and he was arrested that year before accepting a plea deal. Epstein died in 2019 in jail after he was arrested a second time and charged with sex trafficking conspiracy.
The U.S. State Department has officially declared the Resistance Front as a foreign terrorist organization, a specially designated global terrorist. The TRF is a proxy outfit of the Pakistan-based terror group, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, that claimed responsibility for the Pahalgam terror attack in which 26 civilians were killed. Financing, supporting and advising a foreign terrorist organization is considered a criminal offense under American law. Reacting to the move, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar called it a strong affirmation of the India-US counter-terrorism cooperation. At least 40 schools across Bengaluru and 20 schools in Delhi have received similar bomb threats through email. The messages claim that explosive devices had been planted in classrooms. Delhi and Bengaluru police deployed multiple teams to the targeted institutions. No explosives have been found so far. The search operations continue. Justice Yashwant Verma has moved the Supreme Court challenging the legality of the process adopted by the CGI-appointed inquiry panel. Verma has sought for quashing of the committee's final report against him. The petition has stated that the report's unprecedented public disclosure led to a media trial and caused irreparable harm to Verma's personal reputation. The plea added that the final report provided no answers on the details of the case. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. There's plenty more coming up right here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned. We're back in a minute.